to the cloud. There we go. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are here again with another one. Actually, this is a very special mastermind. We have not done one of these in months, especially with a guest. So, this guest right here, um, I was sitting in my work truck one morning, and I've told this story on live, right? On Instagram Live, TikTok Live. And I was just saying this guy actually ministered to me in a big way. I don't think he realizes it just yet. I don't think he realizes it. But ministers in a big way and help give me the extra answer because I'm not the person that asks God for signs. I just know when he drops stuff in my spirit, okay, that was you talking, get the work. Just start getting the work done. So the fact that I actually asked for a sign this particular time. And I see a guy, a white gentleman, knock on the window, and I was just looking like, uh-oh, maybe I didn't do something right. But he was actually there with a little a seed offering and said, God told me to come over here. And I was just like, It's like, yeah. It's like, here you go. And we started to talk. So this guy is none other than Marc Danner. He's right here on the screen with me. I want y'all to give him a warm welcome to the Mad Lucrative Podcast, the Mad Lucrative Community, our lucrative community. Marc, how you doing this morning, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Excited
So,
to be here.
so you said that you normally do that whole going to strangers and blessing them periodically.
Only recently. So,
Okay.
so I am Jewish, and I
Oh,
married a Catholic girl, and
okay.
we got married in a synagogue and raised our children Catholic to the point of First Communion.
Okay.
Um, Went to church, got it's very complicated, but the long and the short of it is last year we started watching The Chosen, and it struck me how Jewish Jesus was. I always knew logically Jesus was a Jew,
Mm-hmm.
but if you ever watch The Chosen, he's like really Jewish. Um,
Say really
and, uh,
Jewish.
and so I started. So then shortly after that, um, I wasn't following any religious material online at all. I got this Instagram reel from a lady named Tara Lee Cobble who has a program called the Bible Recap. It's a
Okay.
program to read the Bible in a year. And for some reason, I mean, she's totally different background, got saved at 4 years old, and I'm sitting here at 62 as a Jewish man and not a practicing Jewish person, just sort of agnostic, I guess.
Okay.
But for some reason, I'm like, gosh, this lady, something's going on here. So I said, all right, I'm going to start this. On May 7th, I started it. I finished the whole Bible by the end of the year, and started going to church in August of last year, got
Okay.
saved in October, and it's just sort of been a whirlwind. And ever since then, um, God really put it on my spirit to be more general. I'm a very introverted person. I'm talking
Me
really
too
introverted.
sometimes.
So, when I get the feeling to go over and ask, thank somebody for their service or buy them a cup of coffee or ask them if they
What
need
is
something,
that on your head, girl?
what's
Let me mute him. I had to mute him.
I go into an immediate panic because it's really uncomfortable for me. So,
Really?
yeah, but I just wanted to, thank you for your service. I feel like you're probably in a very um, underappreciated line of work, at least from what I knew you sitting in your truck. So I
Yeah.
just had this strong feeling that I need to go over and just say, thank you and just give him a little gratuity for I'm a resident of Fulton County and say thank you for what you do in Fulton County. But yeah, that's happened to me a few times over the last year or so. And, it's never been not appreciated. So,
Yeah.
so I've learned to not be so freaked out when I get the feeling.
Well, it was good for me. So the natural part of me, like I'm an introvert, but I know how to turn it on and off, right? especially being in the music business and having to deal with and work with artists. But I have that hero macho man complex 24/7. I'm a down home North Carolinian country boy, but I grew up doing a lot of work in New York and places like that. So I'm not used to nobody. Let me make sure before I say that. I don't I'm not used to anybody being super generous. Um much less like even when I first started that Starbucks that's off of Haynesbridge, that was the first time I ever seen anybody pay for my coffee before I got to the window and they said, well, the car front. I was like, what? So then I was like, well, I keep it going, but I'm just not used to that. So it's just a different, perception, but I appreciate you, man. So we can get into it. We can get into it. What would you say started your journey in wealth management? Like, what was the
Sure.
inspiration to get into the field?
So when I was in high school, I read a book. It was about Warren Buffett and several other uh, of the best investors in the world.
Okay.
Um, and John Templeton was in it. It's a long time ago. Like I said, I'm 62. I'll be 63 in January. But I read that, and I read that Warren Buffett got started as a stockbroker,
Hmm.
and so I thought, well, I'd really like to do that. Um, but I did not go to college. So when I was I usually tell people I didn't go to college because at the time my parents were divorced, we were hurting for money, and my family needed money. The real
Okay.
reason is I hated school. Um, I made it through high school with reasonably good grades, just because God blessed me with the ability to take tests. And, uh, but I hated. I walked into college one day, listened to that math professor sound like he was speaking Chinese, and I walked out and never came back. So I sort of gave up on that dream.
Okay.
And I was selling dictation equipment. I don't even know if you're old enough to know what dictation equipment is, but
No, what is that?
it was real. It's this office product that was uh, in the real, like in the 40s and 50s, it was real popular, where
Okay.
doctors and lawyers would just dictate their notes. They would just talk into a little recording device, and then they'd give a tape cassette to their secretary, and their secretary would transcribe it. And that if literally like, okay, write a letter to Michael Crawford, dear Michael, and they would dictate everything, and then the secretary would type the letter. And so that was sort of a dying technology by the time I got into it in the 90s, but people still, late 80s rather, people still were using it. And so, but it gave me sales experience.
Ah, okay.
So I met a guy at a health club who was a financial advisor, stockbroker at Merrill Lynch. And I wanted to get out of selling dictation equipment because it was, kind of dying off. And so I went to him and I said, do you have any clients? I'm looking for advice. Where can I go to take this sales career to build, my sales career? And he said, well, the highest paying sales job in the world is what I do. He said, why don't you
Hmm.
just, come be a stockbroker? I said, well, I don't
Hmm.
have a college education. And he said, neither does the CEO of Merrill Lynch. So at the time, the CEO of Merrill Lynch did not have a college education, and they didn't have technically, they did not require a college education. So he
Hmm.
said, I'll get you an interview with the manager, and everything just kind of took off. So I went
Okay.
to work. Merrill Lynch was the biggest company in the world in that industry. Um, they had the best training program in that industry. So, it was a stroke of luck, a blessing from God, whatever it is, but it was something that I deeply wanted to do that I never, that I had sort of given up on. So when the
Okay.
opportunity came, um, I just worked my tail off and made hundreds of cold calls a day to people
Mm.
to build my business.
So enlighten me when it comes to the stockbroker world. How is it work? Do you get a certain amount of people to put into a certain stock, or is it like an account and then you in return find the best stock for them to invest in, or how does that
Yeah,
work?
so it's very different than when I got in it. The way it is now is very financial planning heavy, meaning when somebody comes to me, we sit down and we talk about their whole financial life, income, assets, taxes, estate
Mm.
planning, retirement planning, educating their children. And we put together sort of a roadmap to help them get from where they are today to where they want to be. And then the investments are a part of that. So then they open up accounts with me. They move, their investment accounts, their retirement accounts, and I will select investments on their behalf based on a strategy that we agreed on in their financial plan. So
Oh.
people hire me to put together that roadmap and then also to manage the investments for them so that they don't have to, do all the research and figure out what are the best avenues for them to invest and save their money.
So so how is your balance when it comes to your family life and that? Because you have to be on like researching all the time, or do you have something that's automated that'll do it, like do some of the dirty work for you, and then you kind of go back with a fine tooth comb?
It's a combination. So there, we get a lot of outside research that I do read through. AI helps me with that a lot now.
Okay.
So I'm able to read through 100-page research reports and get an executive summary, and then go in and search for different specific things that I want to follow up on. But for the most part, we invest in very diversified portfolios based on kind of long-term trends. So it's not like I'm in there deciding on a day-by-day basis, what do we need to buy or sell today?
Okay. Okay. So have you ever had somebody come into your office and said, some astronomical, I want to have 100 million by the time I retire?
Yeah. No. So my clients tend to be sort of, the typical what I would say upper middle class person who
Okay.
is working for maybe working for the county, maybe working
Okay.
for Coke or Home Depot, and now they're a director or a VP or something like that. And they want to make sure that they're, saving enough to retire comfortably, put their kids through school, that they're managing what they have in the best way they can, that they're not taking too much risk. I've had one. So my largest client has about $9 million.
Mm.
My entire career, I've had one client who had about 20 million, who was a car dealer, and he and I did not gel. He,
Why not?
always wanting to make huge bets, take big risks, and
Uh,
get the gigantic return. Where
okay.
my job for people is the biggest mistake that I have seen in my whole career are people who you can make $100 million. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to make it through your investments. Unless you're doing real estate or something like that, but then real estate, to make $100 million in real estate, you're not investing. That's your business.
Right.
That is your career. Um, People, you cannot become a multimillionaire through multi. I mean, you can make two, three, four, $10 million through investing, but you're good. The only way people make 100 million is through a business.
Mm.
They build a business. They if either take it public or sell it one day. Uh,
Sure. Sure.
but so yeah, so that was a long-winded end. You're going to find, and I'll prepare you. I tend to get long-winded, so
It's
do
cool.
this if I'm
It's
getting off the
cool.
rails too far. But yeah, so no, I typically, my clients typically come to me if they have about 500,000, $1 million, and they want to grow it to 2 or 3 million, retire, maybe buy a second house, put their kids through school. that kind of stuff.
Okay. So safe money.
That's right.
Safe. That's what I like. So when it comes to a lot of the I guess the financial pitfalls, what do you think a lot of people make those mistakes before investments or before they get to retirement age and say, "Oh shoot, I don't have nothing at the end of this."
Yeah.
You
So I think the biggest mistake people make, I've seen it both ends. So and it's very personal for me. So my father's father, my grandfather, my father's side, was the kind of person who never bought a new car, never took a nice vacation, never went out to a nice restaurant, scrimped and scrimped and scrimped and saved for retirement. He was killed for a car accident in a car accident with 52 years old. So he never
ah,
got to enjoy the fruits of his labor. My uncle was 18 when that happened. And I don't know if it was consciously or subconsciously, but he decided I could die tomorrow. I'm not worrying about retirement. And that man made more money, I think, than anybody in our family. And he lives off Social Security now. He had to work until he was about 75 years old just because he never saved money for the future. I mean,
wow.
he spent money, he gambled, he, took huge risks with money. So I've seen the most common mistakes I made or have seen are at both ends of the scale. People
Yeah.
who live 100% for tomorrow and never enjoy life, while they're young, um, and people who live 100% for today and they never do anything for tomorrow. And I preach all the time financial balance. Another huge mistake I make, or I see people make, um, is not having an emergency fund.
Okay.
Not having enough money in savings that if they run into losing their job or, they got to replace the heater and the washing machine and the refrigerator at the same time, and then they have to go into debt to do it, and then the interest is eating them alive, and it becomes this sort of cycle that you can't get out of. So, building up 3, 4, 5 months worth of living expenses in an emergency fund, one of the most important things you can do. Second biggest mistake is the mentality that I'm going to become rich from my investments. I'm going to buy, the hottest stocks. I'm going to buy put everything in Bitcoin, or I'm going to leverage my money. I'm going to borrow money to invest, and then they lose everything.
Mm,
I have seen that so many times. I've had 50 and 60-year-old men crying in my office because they had put all their money in their company stock and their company went bankrupt. Um,
mm,
it is just unbelievable. That happened so much around the 2000 when the first tech bubble burst. All the internet companies were all going to change the world, and Yahoo was the biggest search engine out there, or
yeah.
actually Ask Jeeves was it,
I don't remember that one.
companies that are not even around anymore. We're all the hot stocks of the day, and people lost their life savings in it. So, um, you know, too much money in one investment, leveraging your investments. And I'm not talking about getting a mortgage for real estate. I'm talking about buying stocks on margin and using, derivatives and things like that, things that are very esoteric, instead of just, buying diversified, quality investments that will stand the test of time.
Okay. So when you say, I heard one thing that stuck out, one of those words, and it was a trend going around. I was talking about tricky words. What does buying a stock on margin mean?
So it's borrowing money to buy stock. So legally, you can come in with $10,000 and buy $20,000 worth of stock. You
Oh,
borrow, you can borrow half of what you need to buy the stock. So, you're buying 20 grand, you can borrow 10 if you put up 10. But you start getting what's called margin calls if that loan gets to 70% of the value. So if you come in and you buy $20,000 worth of stock with 10,000 and the stock then falls to the point where that 10,000 is 70%, what would that be? I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. So if the value of that stock fell to $14,000, the
Mm-hmm.
brokerage firm is going to say, "Hey, Michael, you need to put in another $1,000 or we're going to start selling off your stock."
What?
Yeah. So it's very, very risky and you can lose all your money very quickly. I had somebody who had um, $13 million worth of stock with a $2 million margin loan in the year 2000 on a huge tech company that's owned by Dell right now, but it was called EMC. And EMC started, you know, it fell like a rock during the dot-com bubble bursting. And he let that stock go down to 3 million. He started getting margin calls. He started having to sell his stock. When all was said and done, he walked away with 300,000 from 13 million. It was it was horrific. So one tip, never, never, never buy stock on margin. Never invest. The only time you're going to borrow money to invest is a mortgage on a real estate, and don't overdo it with that.
Yeah. So what is your take on using equity to buy stock?
Home equity,
Mm-hmm.
technically, it is illegal for me to do that. So if I do
Oh,
that for you knowingly, I can lose my license. If you do it for yourself, you can do that, but whoever does it for you is it's not a
uh,
law where you can go to jail, but it's a
penalty.
rule where you can lose your license.
Okay.
We get asked every year, did you knowingly take the proceeds of a home equity line of credit or a mortgage invested in stocks?
And they'll ask you that.
Say that again.
They will ask you that as a
Yes, they asked me
that
that, and that is a criminal penalty. If I lie on that questionnaire, that is a criminal penalty.
I didn't know that. I learned something new. Okay. And we got one question, but I got another question. I got a few questions, y'all. So y'all gonna have to just put it in the chat. Put it in the chat because I got a few questions. Um, so when it comes to people getting into um homes and kind of looking at how the market is going now, all these jobs is being lost. What do you think could be some of those, I guess, investment vehicles or just anything that they could start doing to offset the money that's going to be lost as it relates to them losing their jobs?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in an industry where you think your job is not secure, you need to build up money in a savings account or a high yield savings or a money market account. Because if you're investing that money in the stock market and I've had this happen to a lot of people in my career, all their money's in the stock market and a recession comes and they lose their job and their stock portfolio is down and they're having to sell stocks when they're down. So, if that's why that emergency fund is so important to give you time to find a new job where you don't have to sell your stock. Now, once you have, you know, a good 6 months worth of living expenses in a savings account, then you can start investing in stock. Then, and when you very first, I think one of the, what's the balance towards start investing?
Mm-hmm.
Let me answer that real quick because I tell this to everybody. As soon as you're 18 years old, start investing 1% of your money or 1% of your income. Literally just start investing. I don't care whether you have an emergency fund, whether you got credit card bills, whatever it is, you can take 1% of your money and start buying the stock market. And you can buy the entire stock market with something called an index fund. You mentioned ETFs before we started, Michael.
Uh-huh.
Um, there's two ways to buy a whole bunch of stocks at one time. One is a mutual fund, one is an ETF. They're very similar in that with one investment, you can buy 100 stocks, you can buy 1,000 stocks, you can buy 2,000, 3,000 stocks.
Mm-hmm.
There's something called the Vanguard Total. market index fund.
Yep.
It owns
Ah,
almost 3,000 stocks.
I
Okay.
did not know that.
You can buy that fund and you can be assured. There's very few times I can say assured in my profession, but you can be assured that as long as you don't sell, you will never lose your money. So if you could buy that today and tomorrow we could go into the Great Depression. And if you hold on long enough, that total market index fund is coming back because
Mm,
it is based on an index that has been around since before the Great Depression. Okay, so
yeah.
where people completely lose their money during recession is they own individual stocks and those stock companies go out of business during the recession. There's no such thing as the total market index going out of business. If you've
Mhm.
ever seen a commercial, there used to be a commercial on about gold that said, and it's never gone to zero. Well, neither has the S&P 500. S&P 500 is the index of the largest 500 stocks in the country. It's never been at zero. It may have dropped 50%. It's dropped, 30%, 40%, never goes to zero. So
Mm,
as long as you hold on long enough, you're going to end up making money. And that's what, and so I will tell everybody, I don't care how young you are, how little money you make, you can take 1%, go to Vanguard and start putting $50 a month into the Vanguard Total Index Fund. And
yep.
then what you're going to find is, oh, I'm not missing that 1%. So next year you can take it two. Next year you can take it to three, or next month, whatever is comfortable for you. But you don't, there's a question, is it worth paying a financial advisor, to manage your money? Question
Mm,
is, it depends. Is it worth paying a plumber to unclog your toilet? For some people, no. For me, it is because if I try to fix my own toilet, it's going to cost me three times as much as if I'd have hired the plumber in the first place. But when you first start out, Michael is
oh, we froze.
freezing. Are you guys hearing me? Was I frozen?
I hear you now. It
Okay.
was froze, but we're good now.
Okay. When you first start out, you definitely don't need a financial advisor. Just start investing in a total market index fund and just start building up your money. When you get $250,000, $500,000, well, I hate to say that because there have been many people that I've made a big difference in their careers and their lives way before they had that kind of money.
Mm,
Because a good financial advisor goes way past what you're investing in. A good financial advisor is going to let you know how much do you need to save. Should you be saving in a brokerage account, a 401k, a Roth, a regular? How much life insurance do you need? How can you reduce your taxes? So a good financial advisor is going to be way beyond just which mutual fund do you buy, which stocks do you buy.
mhm.
So really, the way I say, is a financial advisor worth it? A good financial advisor is always going to be worth it, depending on your situation. I mean, there have been times where I've told people, look, go to Vanguard, open up a total market fund, go to LegalZoom, get a will, put, X, Y, and Z in your will. So sometimes there's not a lot that I can do for somebody long run, but there's a lot I can do up front and just say, hey, here's some basic things you need to make sure you have covered.
Mhm.
But many, many people can benefit from a good financial advisor.
So I had a question for you as it relates to my W-2 followers, yeah,
Yeah.
right? And even myself. So I started doing investing in Vanguard, a lot of different ETFs, especially in the tech space. But the county job also has the 401k plan, and I have was it 457B?
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
457. Yeah, 457B and there's a 403B and a 457.
Okay.
You
I
might
think we
have
got
both.
457. You got both. So what is the difference? Honestly, I'm just putting money in stuff. Because I just know I remember what it felt like to be broke, and I never ever want to touch that again.
Yeah.
But what is
Yeah. So what Michael's talking about, you know, uh, most people have heard of 401k. So 401k is a retirement plan provided by your employer. A 403b is the same thing as a 401k, but it's for government and nonprofit organizations.
Uh-huh.
And then a 457 is only for nonprofit and government organizations. So the difference between a 403b and a 457 is 403b, you're putting some money in, Fulton County's putting some money in. A 457, I'm and I don't work with a lot of nonprofit, but I actually have an Alpharetta cop. But I believe 457 is fully funded by the county, right? You don't put any of your own money in the 457, do you?
So I do, but they give me a match.
Okay.
Say so I
So
think
that's the wheel. 403B, I think, is 100% your money. 457 is your money plus a match.
yeah. Yeah. So then
401k is usually your money plus a match. So if
right.
you're working for a for-profit company, that's another big mistake I see people make. Well, if I put money in the 401k, I can't get to it until I'm 59 and a half. And, it's which in some ways is a good thing, some ways is a bad thing. But at least get the match. So if you're working for a company where, if they have a 3% match or 4% match, that means whatever you're putting in to your 401k, they're going to double it up to that 3 or 4%. So at
Mm,
least get that extra, that free money. Maybe you don't put in as much as you're legally allowed, which is 23,000 a year, but
okay.
at least get the match.
Okay. Now, another question, and I know again, y'all can put y'all questions in the chat. We're gonna get to all of them by the end. I promise you. Um, if you have kids, right, as I do, I'm a little bit confused on where I could be investing money for them. Right now, they just have a savings account, right?
Yeah.
But I also have a LLC for my daughters because they do content. So they have their own business checking account too. But really, money's just sitting over there.
Yeah.
I've read different investment things that we could go into, but I don't really understand it like that. So
Yeah.
it's just sitting right now.
Okay. So, they can have a brokerage account and an index fund just like you can. It would have to be in something called a UGMA account, Uniform Gift to Minors account, which is an account that is theirs legally, but they're not allowed to touch it. You control it. So you
Okay.
are what's called the custodian, and it's their money. You legally have to, keep it for them, but they're not allowed to own investments directly. It has to
Okay.
be just like I'm sure the savings account that you have for them is also a UGMA account.
Oh, so it's probably already a UGMA account.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because banks won't let you open an account for a minor without you being the guardian on the account.
Right.
But there's other ways to invest your children's money, just like there's ways to invest yours. Um, and so one thing to keep in mind, whenever there is any kind of an account with a tax benefit, there's going to be conditions on that money. So brokerage accounts, savings accounts, they don't have any tax benefits, but they also don't have any conditions on it. You can get to the money whenever you want. There's no penalties to get to the money. There's no age limits to get to the money. When you get into something that has a tax benefit, like a regular IRA or Roth IRA, or an education savings account, which is called the 529, all of those things have tax benefits. They also all have restrictions and rules around how the money can be used or when the money can be used. So
Oh,
if you want tax benefit, like your children who are content creators and they're making their own income, they could put money in a Roth IRA and that money will
oh,
grow for them tax free until they take it out. They could have $50 million in a Roth IRA when they retire. It all comes out tax free. But
wow.
there's restrictions on that. They can't get to the money for until they're 59 and a half, except for what they put in. So let's say with a Roth IRA, it's kind of a little different than a regular. So with a Roth IRA, let me back up. Let's look at Roth IRA versus regular IRA.
Okay.
Put money in a regular IRA, you get a tax deduction right now. So if you make 100,000 a year and you put $10,000 in a regular IRA, you only pay taxes on $90,000. But when you retire, any money you take out of that regular IRA is taxed as ordinary income. So you
So
just
you have
add
an
it to
income.
your like a W-2. You just
Okay.
add it to your taxes and you pay tax on it. A Roth IRA is the exact opposite. Roth IRA, you don't get any tax deduction now. So you make 100K, you put in 10, you still pay taxes on 100K. But if you put that 10,000 in there for your whole life and it's worth $3 million when you're 65 years old and you retire and you go, I want to buy a beach house. I'm taking that $3 million out. You pay zero tax.
Because
Or
you moved
took
into
out
real estate?
50 or 60 grand a year, zero tax. If you die and leave it to your wife, zero tax. If both of you die and leave it to your kids, zero tax. So Roth IRA, the big tax break in a Roth IRA comes from all the growth, all the returns that you make on that money that you will never pay tax on. Peter Thiel. Everybody heard of Peter Thiel?
Uh-uh. How
He
you
is a
spell
he is a private equity guy. He invests in all the startup tech companies before they ever became heard of, before you ever heard of them. He has
Okay.
a $5 billion Roth IRA. He has,
Shit.
he has been taking his money ever since they created the Roth IRA. He has been putting as much money in as he can, and he invests in all these startups, that nobody's ever heard of. But that's his job. Okay. When we invest in startups, we have no idea what we're looking at. I have no idea. I've been doing this for 35 years. But
Okay.
I do not invest in startups. I don't have the experience or the expertise to understand what and when they invest in startups, when these guys invest in startups, they might invest in 100 of them and 90 of them go broke. But
Right.
in that, and David Sachs, he's another one. And he might be the guy with the $5 billion. But I think it's Peter Thiel, but they might all do it. But yeah, David Sachs, Peter Thiel, Marc Andreessen. These are all guys that, former tech guy, but Peter Thiel started PayPal with Elon Musk.
Uh,
Um, but anyways, it just, my point is, it does not, it doesn't matter how much money you get built up in a Roth IRA, it is tax free when you take the money out. So
wow.
your children could invest in a Roth IRA, but they're sort of locking that money out, for the long term. So
That,
you could,
and I'm gonna try to make this my last two questions because I see we got some other ones. So what would you advise the person that's just starting to invest, maybe in their late 20s, mid 30s, that you know, it's kind of late to start, but this is the starting point for them. How would you advise them?
sure. So, if you have a 401k, invest at least as much as the match. And then if you have extra money, open up a brokerage account at Vanguard or Schwab or E-Trade or someplace, Robinhood, and start investing in a total market index fund.
Okay.
And I would say when you're just starting out, a lot of people will encourage you to put as much money as you can in a 401k. I would encourage you to do the match, make sure you're getting the whole match. So if it's 3%, do 3, 4%, do 4, 6%, do 6. But over and above that, I'd build up money outside the 401k because it's good to have money that you can get to if you need it, or if you want to do something with the money besides retire. If you want to start a business one day, if you want to buy a bigger house one day, um, the 401k is not going to help you.
No, no. Well, and then I guess with the penalty of it all, like if you So you're not penalized after 59 and a half.
Correct.
Okay.
The
But you're
penalties
still going
don't
to
begin.
pay taxes on earned
Still
income.
going to pay taxes. That's right.
Okay.
If it's unless it's a Roth IRA. And that's another thing. When you sign up for your 401k, almost all companies now allow you to do a regular 401k or a Roth 401k. And the younger you are, the better the Roth is. But if you're in a really high tax bracket, it's probably good to do the regular IRA,
Okay.
regular 401k, pardon me.
Regular 401k.
Regular is the one where you're getting the tax deduction. But if you're 30 years old and you're making 80, 90, 100,000, 50,000, whatever, a Roth 401k is much better.
Okay. So the first question that we had in the chat that we did not see earlier was would it be your advice? What would be your advice for life balance towards someone just starting to invest? I guess we kind of touched on that. Uh
Yeah, I mean, I start off with that 1%, see how your cash flow is. You're probably going to find that you can easily afford that. You know, ideally, the sort of the ideal ratio is at some point in your life, you're spending your 50% of your money is going to necessity, 30% of your money is going to lifestyle variable expenses, and 20% is being saved. If you can get to the point where you're saving 20% of your income, you're
you're good.
gonna you find you're gonna be very comfortable in your old age.
So do you have a dollar amount I feel like I already know the answer. But do you have a dollar amount that people should go towards for retirement by a certain age?
It's more percentages.
Okay.
So, if you can get to that 20%, I don't typically see that until people are in their, late 40s, early 50s. If
Mm,
you can get to 20% before that, you are way ahead of the crowd. Um, but
wow.
usually, you know, when you're just starting out, people start saving about 5%. Then, you get to your mid 30s, you're saving 10, maybe 15 by the time you're in your 40s. But, I have people who are retired who are living comfortable lives with $500,000, but then I have other people who have 5, 6, $7 million. So a lot of it just depends on what your income was when you were working and what your lifestyle was while you were working. So, the key that I try to do is help put people in a position where they don't have to reduce their lifestyle when they stop working, that they can continue in their lives. Now, I know there's a lot of people, well, I want a much better lifestyle. Okay. Um, I have a much better lifestyle now than I did when I was in my 30s. Uh,
Right.
so, it's typical when you're 30 or 40 years old to say, well, I'm going to need a much better lifestyle than I'm living now. Um, so, you kind of come up with the income that you're trying to achieve, and then the dollar value that you need to save up is going to be determined by how much income do you need. So if you said, I need $100,000 after taxes to live a comfortable lifestyle. Well, you're going to need roughly,
10 million.
no, probably about four.
Okay. 4 million because the aim is to live off of how much of that?
Interest, dividends, and capital gains.
Okay.
Yeah, or, it's no, 100,000, you only need about three. Because about the sort of the rule of thumb is you can live on 4% of your nest egg and never have to worry about running out of money. So if you got $3 million, that's going to give you about 120K. After taxes, it'll, leave you with about 100.
And you said interest, dividends, and capital gains is the
Yeah.
aim to try to live off of that.
Yep.
So is the aim to not to never touch what you initially invested?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one because, you, unless you have a really strong goal of leaving a legacy for your kids, you don't want to sacrifice, your own enjoyment and retirement in order to never touch that principle. Um, so, but also you can't time how long you're going to live and you don't know what the future holds. So you have to have a cushion. So usually, if somebody comes to me, if somebody retired today with $3 million, we're probably not going to push that they die with $3 million, but we're probably going to try to arrange it so that they have a minimum of 1 million when they die, because A, we don't know how long they're going to live, and B, they might need long-term care or something like that.
Mm.
So, typically we want some kind of a cushion besides I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. It's popular up in Alpharetta. I want to, or there's actually been a book written called Die with Zero.
I
And
have
or
it's some social media clips that's been going around
yeah,
about
I do not agree with that,
that.
because you're going to hit zero way before you die, and you're going to be really unhappy.
Mm,
Um, and I've the last thing you want, I don't know, last thing I ever wanted, because I've seen this happen to people, is to need a nursing home and have to rely on the Medicaid nursing homes instead of the nursing home you can afford. The
mm,
Medicaid nursing homes are not good places to be.
no.
The $10,000 a month nursing homes are great places to be. And so I want to be able, if I ever need a nursing home, to be in the $10,000 a month nursing home. That's not a real exciting goal, but
It's
uh, for me, and I actually wrote a LinkedIn post about this. Ever since I was a teenager, I have had a fear of not being able to make choices for myself when I was an old person. And that was one of the things that's driven me more than nice cars, nice house, nice vacation. It's to make sure that and I'm real glad I did it, because I have
not.
6 fused discs. So I have chronic back pain. I don't travel. All I do is work, go to church, and hang out with my family. And so, but I got a nice nest egg. And if I ever need a nurse, I'm gonna have that nurse in my house, and it's gonna be a nurse of my choosing.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so to
Okay.
PMI probably, but
No, I love it. I I haven't got that far in my timeline development just yet. I'm not there just yet. So
yeah, no, no, no.
think about it.
I do have a nice house though, and I do have nice cars, but it
Yeah.
was all driven by this fear of not being able to care for myself as an old person.
Mm, okay.
Fear
Uh,
is a big driver.
who?
Fear will motivate you,
Yes.
nothing else.
That's what pushes me now. That pushes me every day. Like that's why I go as hard as I go. I remember the pivotal moment. I've had probably about three good ones. That's just like core memories. The sheriff coming up to my condo when I lived in North Carolina and said, "You've been foreclosed on, and this is the paperwork." And me going back and forth to the lawyers trying to pay them to settle and all this. That I will never forget that. I will never forget going to studios in New York and sleeping on the couches and trying to fight to get that first placement. And then the feeling of getting the first placement, like, right? And then my daughters being born
Oh yeah,
and the responsibility, like just hitting hard. I will never forget those. Those are always going to be my driving factors when it
yeah,
comes to working, putting the work in.
yep, me too. So everybody's heard of Tony. I'm running low on battery here.
All right,
Uh,
you good.
Everybody's heard of Tony Robbins, right?
Yep.
So Tony Robbins, I learned one thing from Tony Robbins that changed my whole outlook about goals and money and success. When I was very young, I read the book Think and Grow Rich. And Think and Grow Rich was all about goals and, focusing on your goals, and you become what you think about. And it made sense to me, but I never really got this drive from all the vision board, like everybody likes to have a vision board and put your beach house there and your Ferrari and all this stuff. I would do that and I would never meet my goals. And Tony Robbins, when I can't remember which book it was, but he said, you have to figure out whether you are more motivated by pleasure or pain. Everybody is motivated by both, but
Mm,
everybody is motivated more by one. I am more motivated by the avoidance of pain than I
mm,
am by pleasure. And so fear, when I honed in more on the fear of being destitute rather than the goal of being wealthy, I made more money. I became more successful. Now, some people are not like that. Some people, that makes them panic, they get anxiety, and they get
right.
paralyzed by that thought.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out whether you are more motivated by the positive pleasure or the fear of avoiding pain. And
Mm,
whatever that one is, hone in on it and just focus on using that as your motivator.
love it. Love it. Got another question. How would you structure a long-term investment portfolio to optimize for tax efficiency, estate planning, and potential changes in tax law?
Yeah. So that last part, it can be real important because the tax laws do change. You know,
Mm,
one party comes in, they raise tax, another party comes in, they lower taxes. Somebody gets rid of the estate tax, somebody, brings the estate tax back. It can be very fluid. Um, and we never know what's going to happen. So, you kind of have to just go off what the law is today and what are certain probable things that could happen. So, is the estate tax ever going to completely go away? No. Is the estate tax ever going to go back to where when I first started, if you had more than $600,000 when you died, your family had to pay estate taxes? No, it's never going back. So right now, if you are a single person and you have less than $11 million, you don't have to worry about the estate tax. If you're a married couple and you have less than $22 million, you don't have to worry about the estate tax. I don't
mm,
think that's ever going to go down because that
okay.
is part of the law and it would require a 60 vote majority in the Senate, plus have the House of Representatives and the presidency all at the same time. The country is split too evenly politically for any major changes to happen in the estate law. It's not going to go
Okay.
away, not going to go below, $11 million either. So estate planning for most people is pretty easy. Um, if you have children, you have to have something called a child's trust or a children's trust in your will. If you don't have children, you just pick who you want to leave your money to, and you leave your money to. Um, the tax efficiency part, that's where you have to determine how much control are you going to give up in order to get tax benefits. So, I put a lot of money away in retirement accounts. I have done that since I've been about 50 years old because
Okay.
I have a very high income and I just get eaten alive in income tax. And I'll tell you, I worked 32 years for big companies. And everybody used to say, "Oh, you got to get out of the big company and get away from the W-2 and start your own business for all the tax write-offs." Well, I have my own business for 3.5 years. I'm still paying more in taxes than I ever did as a W-2 person. Um, there, there's, there is, now I've met people who tell me I'm stupid because they buy all their paper towels and toilet paper for their house through their business. Okay, I'm just not built that way. I'm motivated by fear. I have a big fear of jail. I know people who've been to prison. I don't want to be there. Um, so I do things by the book. And, you know, there's just not that many ways to not pay taxes. Um,
Right.
now, one day I hope I will sell my business and I'll make a boatload of money and it'll be taxed as a capital gain at 20% instead of my ordinary income, which is taxed at 40%. So, structuring your investments around capital gains versus ordinary income, that is, a great way to do it. And index funds and ETFs, both of which are very diversified and can build a lot of wealth. They're very tax efficient because you only pay taxes on them when you sell them. And if you hold them for more than a year, it's all taxed as a capital gain. So
Mhm.
if your ordinary income tax bracket is 20%, you only pay 10% on capital gains. If your ordinary income bracket is 40%, you only pay 20% as capital gains. So, doing Roth IRAs and investing in things that only generate long-term capital gains, that's the best way to build wealth with tax efficiency.
Okay. So, and I'm just kind of I'm backtracking what you said before. So you said most of the time if people are hitting that $100 million mark is normally not through the investment. It's normally through a business that's been built.
That's correct.
Okay. And then they'll take some of that money and then invest in whatever other vehicles
Yep.
to. Okay. All right. And that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Now, I think I can make this my last question because we're right up on the hour. And I don't wanna take all your time. Um, what is your thoughts on loans and trying to achieve debt free versus get loans and pay for things?
Yeah, so I have again a balanced view of that. Um, I am not the Dave Ramsey guy who
Okay.
says eat beans and rice and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches until you don't owe anybody anything. Okay, that was my grandfather. All right, I don't believe that, but I also don't believe in getting over leveraged. But you know, I've I have lots of clients who have never bought a car uh, without a loan. They always paid cash. Um, I never liked plunking down cash on a car. It just bothers me to take, tens of thousands of dollars, take it out of the stock market or take it out of my savings account. But so I think, as long as you're in a comfortable position to pay the loan. I mean, I tell this to people when they invest in real estate. I'm not a real estate investment expert. But especially if it's not your business, if you're just, out there making a living and you want to buy some real estate, my biggest advice is make sure that you can afford that mortgage payment if you don't have a tenant. Because if you go out and and my brother's done this 3 times now. He buys a piece of property where he sees all the projections and all the history of people in that area, and they're, making triple what their costs are in renting, and somehow it never works out for him like that.
Mm.
Um, but he's always been able to afford the mortgage payment because he has a very high paying job. Now, when he retires, he's not going to be doing that anymore because his experience has not been good. I have other clients. I have one client who's got 9 properties and he's about to retire, and he has $130,000 a year of rental income from paid for properties,
Wow.
and he will never even need to touch his investments because he's got Social Security. He and his wife both get about 4 grand a month from Social Security, and he's got $130,000 in his rental income. So his investments, that's just gravy. That's
Yeah.
like, oh, let's go and a
And they're paid
year-long
for
cruise.
properties. No mortgage
These
on
are
those.
all paid for. Now, they had a lot of mortgages
Yeah.
while they were coming up, but they always had the ability to pay the mortgage if there was no tenant.
Okay.
So that, I I don't think you can really build wealth without borrowing money. Um, but I think you have to just stay away from taking too much risk. Now, there's plenty of people. Look, Elon Musk took every dime he had and leveraged himself to death to save Tesla. Okay. Elon Musk could be sitting here broke, as anybody else, but he's worth whatever he's worth, $300 billion, because he took an enormous risk. I'm not built that way. I
Wow.
just, I'm just not built that way. Some people are, and some people will lose everything and they'll start over and they'll re-leverage themselves again, and they'll do it over and over until they finally, hit the big time. God bless them. That's great. But that's not me. And some people will not. They'll do it once, they'll do it twice, and they'll end up, living off of nothing but Social Security when they retire because they never learned their lesson. So, I'm a sort of I'm not overly conservative to the point of taking zero risk, never buy stocks, never do this, never do that, never take out a loan. But I'm very opposed to taking a lot of risk and leverage. The more money you borrow, the more risk you're taking.
Hmm. So if we don't have any other questions, I got
Free
my last.
toilet paper and chow.
I think I will want if, and I'm gonna wait for them to put some questions in the chat. But I got my last question would be, if you were to give one piece of advice for any of our community members, just looking to build wealth from their creative work, what would it be?
So I'm the least creative person I know. Um, and I'll always, I said, God, there's got to be some kind of way for somebody in my family to be a creator, but we just don't have it in us. Well, my son did, but he went the computer route instead. Um, you know, just know the only experience that I have are people who have had sort of similar stories as yourself, Michael. They
Hmm.
they achieved some success and they weren't aware. And I've met pro athletes who have done this. They think it's going to last forever. Hopefully it will. But the vast majority of time, making money as a creative person, it's going to be you're going to have a shorter career. You're going to have a shorter lifespan of making a lot of money. So save as much as you can while the times are good. Bank as much as you can. Learn from somebody like Michael who has, you know, made
Failed and
mistakes
win. Failed and win.
and has seen,
Uh,
the right way to do it and the wrong way to do it. And also on the other side of the coin, have if you really have talent, be patient and make decisions that are long-term decisions. Don't sell all your stuff to get an upfront check.
yeah.
Um, you know, Eat peanut butter and jelly and beans and rice in order for you to own your stuff until you're 60 years old or whenever. The Beatles sold their content when they were old and it was worth billions of dollars,
Exactly.
not at the beginning. Um, that's the best advice I could give you is have some confidence in yourself, have some patience, pay the price, suffer at the beginning, um, and try to keep as much as you can of your own stuff.
Yeah. Now I don't know if Mark, and thank you for that. That was great. Thank you. I don't know if he's taking clients, Mark. I'll let him
Um,
answer that. Uh,
Yes, I do take so that there so I take a few clients a year because I only have a two-person practice. So it's just me and one assistant. And we're close to capacity, but not at capacity. But I also do at least 2 hours a month of just sort of pro bono advice. So I always will meet with somebody or get on a call with somebody, learn about your situation and see if it makes sense for me to be your advisor in the long run, or if you're that person that I just say, hey, do these 5 things and you'll be set up for the next 5 or 10 years.
yeah.
And so if you want to work with me or if you want to have a call with me, Michael, feel free to give out well, here, I
All right.
just send me an email.
All right. And I got to take you out to lunch. We have to do lunch or something. Maybe get the families together and yeah, I got to do something.
This is my pleasure. I actually did a post on LinkedIn that I'm looking for pro bono clients because it's something that I like to do. I like to help people who can't afford a financial advisor or who really don't need a long-term financial advisor. They just need some good financial advice. And you'd be surprised. It's hard to find pro bono clients. I got
It's,
15,000 followers on LinkedIn. I put out a thing and I got one person
you sound like me.
take me up on that. I think people think it's a scam or I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
So,
you know,
so
I'm there.
I'm not going to say the name of the event, but there's a few events that happen in Atlanta, and I'm just because how I grew up, my background in music and in business, I'm very conservative. And I don't shy away from saying it. I'm super conservative when it comes to business, finance, relationship building, right? And I think a lot of the times the stuff that's promoted on social media is get rich quick. I'm gonna give you 10,000 or give me your $10,000. I'm gonna invest it and you're gonna make $100,000 next month. And me growing up the slow way and grinding it, I'm like, that is a scam. That is a
And
scam.
there's a lot of scams out there. A lot of scams. I used to tell my wife, it is amazing. I think it's easier to scam people out of when I was first starting out. It is hard to get people to give you their money to invest in real investments. It's
Yeah.
really hard. I mean, people ask me, well, what do I need to do to start in what you're doing? You need the thickest skin you can possibly have. It takes a lot of work to get one client. Um,
Mhm.
but it's so easy to scam people out of their money. And the
Yeah.
reason is you can promise them things that are never going to happen. You
Yeah.
know, if I tell you, oh, give me your money, I'm going to make you 10% a year for the rest of your life, it's not that thrilling. Um, but, it's pretty exciting if I say, give me $10,000 and next year you'll have 50. Um, and people believe it because people need and want that home run. And it's usually the only home runs out there are the ones you make yourself.
That is a bar. That is a bar. That is good. Hey, that might be your clickbait right there. When we clip this up, that's gonna be it.
Trademark that.
Yes, that's gonna be it. But I appreciate it. Somebody said snaps. Exactly. Snaps, snaps, snaps. You don't know. You look young. I would have never gave you 60. But snaps is what the kids say.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So anybody on this call, if you want to talk about your specific situation, just send me an email and we'll set up a Zoom. And I'll be of whatever help I can.
all right, sir. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Look, my daughters they know the time. They're at the door now. I appreciate you. I'll be reaching out to you and everybody, hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Hopefully y'all enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mark.
No
Thanks,
problem.
Scott. My pleasure. Have a blessed day.
All right, have a good one. Bye. That was cool.